Hi, welcome back to my studio practice. And here I've done a bit of a raid on the shed and I've discovered these. They're little easels that you can get quite cheaply with a miniature canvas. And I stained these, preparing for smaller works. So what I'm noticing is that when I live stream, the projects are quite long and they're very involved, they're very intensive. There's no shortcuts, there's no fast fixes or anything. It's as you see it, as it happens kind of thing. So I felt that it takes a bit of a demand on the audience to watch something like that. And so what is actually
Now we're
needed
going to begin
is something a little bit more viewer friendly. That's how I feel about it.
Now we're going to begin
And
paint the
and so
halo.
we go back to the demo
surrounds
class.
guitar and
If I can just
Quetzal
find the
on
demo
top.
class.
I was concerned about having green again.
There we are. So what I was thinking was if I could create some works which could be completed within the hour. And the only way I can think of doing that is to create, smaller works. And so you can see a work completed from beginning to end in a single session. But I found these miniature easels because I'm quite interested in hummingbirds, and hummingbirds lend themselves to be painted small. But also, I'm just interested in birds at the moment, and so I can see that this canvas made up in olive green, this one in burnt sienna, I think it is, with the reddish brown that you can see, and this one in yellow ochre as a stain, are all ready for treatment. So this this section today is a mixture of live and recorded session, and I wonder if you can spot the gaps because we are bringing April to
now we're going to begin
a close.
To
paint
the
halo. Let's see
which surrounds
what we can find. Okay.
guitar and
So
Quetzal on top.
I have a plan for.
I was concerned about having green against green. I didn't want to
Elassomorph.
overdo it, and so
And here
I've chosen this.
Hi. So, what's of interest here? Well, this painting is more or less complete. The areas of interest for me are the checked pattern continuing under this eyelash into this no man's area of stained canvas. This is the area that is least treated on the entire surface. You can see that it is reflected here in the background foliage of the distant trees. But that's deliberate. This area here is just unsatisfactory for me to look at, and so what I want to do is continue this check pattern going across. But if I do that, this eyelash here becomes obscured. The way to treat that is to, perhaps change the colour of the lashes, and something has emerged over the course of April, which has, developed my Elassomorphs a little bit further. So that's the evolution, if you like, of the eyelashes becoming green leaves of the long, thin variety. So that's just something that has happened. It wasn't a conscious choice. It's just something that occurred. I can think of things in advertising that are similar to this, and so it's possible that I may owe that influence to this. Next, so that is one area that I want to deal with. The next area that I want to deal with is there has to be an object here, and the object is a symbolic one. It's it's a presumed answer. So I'll give you a clue. It must be the kind of thing that unlocks all the meaning, and its antecedent is already on the surface, already on the painting right now, even as we speak. So there's that as well. So we've got the checkboard, we've got the detail here. The beaks are also an area that have been left largely untreated, and I am a little bit frightened of those because they're so fiddly, so footery, they're going to be problematic for me to paint. However, I have painted these lashes, so I should be able to paint these beaks. And the last thing is, connecting the threads. The thread of the beak connecting up with this tadpole teardrop. It's really difficult to describe this painting. It's such a stream of consciousness that there aren't single words that are able to describe what is going on. So new phrases have to be invented, like the tadpole teardrop has to be connected to the drinking tongue, and also connect up here as well, so that these two forms are unified in some way, or unified with the symbolic other object. So that's it. And once those are put in, I think that this painting is largely finished, but not completely, because you're watching this image, and I want to profit commercially from the creation of this image, and so there are one or two things that I'm going to do with the painting beyond what I present here. But you have followed me through almost to the very completion of the work before it is, a commercial product, for want of a better expression. So that's the plan, and now we need to get on with it. So I need to get on with this artwork, and so I have to make the chessboard now a bit of a pop quiz at the moment. Looking at these colours here, you should be able to identify them. There's burnt or raw umber. This is burnt umber in this case, the warmer variety. French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue hue, cadmium yellow light, and Winsor & Newton. So what am I going to do? What am I going to use to create the black and white of the chessboard? Can you tell? 8 seconds to choose. Okay, you should have guessed it by now. So I am going to use the brown, probably raw umber rather than burnt umber, and French ultramarine blue to make the black, and the white of the chessboard is going to be titanium white. Okay, so what am I going to use for the green colouring of the lashes? Can you guess? 8 seconds to choose. Let's go. 8 seconds. Should have guessed it by now. So if I want to make a dark green, I'm going to use French ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow light. But if I want a lovely sap or spring green, then I'm going to use cerulean blue hue and cadmium yellow light. In reality, I'm probably going to make use of a combination of these colours. So that's it. I've had a root around in my supplies and I've discovered some things that are of interest. This is a device for storing the brushes. It's a little bit dirty, but it's been used over the years. But I can insert my brushes in here, keep them standing up, keep my favourites in their place. I love the rigger brushes. This is a tree and foliage texture brush, so I'm going to place that there. But the ones that I regularly use really are these kind of drawing brushes. From the side, you can see, okay, that they just stand upright and they're ready for use. And this is going to tidy up my studio surface no end. But it's payday tomorrow, and so I may be ordering some things online. It might be useful to see, for you to see what I'm ordering and how I'm doing the ordering. Here's another little quiz for you. Okay, inside this bottle, I've got some medium that I'm going to use to bring the painting to conclusion. Okay, now mix with water and in higher concentration. What is this likely to be? 8 seconds to choose. Okay, if you guessed it, here it is. It's water mixable linseed oil. Okay, so I'm going to use this more linseed oil to water in my mix because I'm using the final layers to put on my painting. And so to observe the fat over lean principle, I am going to use this linseed oil. However, there are others that we can use. For instance, this one over here, stand oil. It's not something that I've used, but do you notice the colour? Okay, there is a little bit more yellowing in the stand oil than there is in the linseed oil. And of course, linseed oil is used to make the oil in the first place. Well, that's one of the ingredients. There are others like safflower oil, but linseed oil is the one that I'm going to use this time. Well guessed. And if I wanted to create glazes, absolutely use the fast drying medium. Okay, so after all this has been live streamed and put out there, I'm actually going to finish off the piece by glazing with this and almost in a neat mix, with very little water in it, just a lot of fast drying medium to create a glaze so that I can stain and tint and modify in very, very subtle ways the image that I'm producing. Did you get it right? Well done, you. Okay, which of these mediums am I going to use in my final part of the production? 8 seconds to guess. You're ready to see? Okay, it's linseed oil. Now, linseed oil is actually used in the manufacture of the paint, so it's quite probable that your tubes of paint contain some sort of linseed oil. A variant on this would be safflower oil. So sometimes you have to look at the tube and find out. I could have used stand oil, okay, but comparing the two, look how stand oil is very, very different color, but in fact leads to slightly more yellowing of the painting over time. So I'm going to use linseed oil. However, there is another medium that we can use. Fast drying medium. Now I'm going to use fast drying medium after I've done all the live streaming. I'm going to finish off the painting for commercial purposes with fast drying medium and do some glazes and some very, very fine tuning of the colours on the surface so that, we're ready to for me to use a work that is commercially ready to be used. Okay, so did you guess it right? Well done, you. So here is the artwork ready for completion. I'm just going to carry on with a pencil here and I'm going to draw in where I think chessboard is in here. Okay, and maybe separation. Well, if I can fit it in. So here goes. I have got linseed oil, little dollop on the palette, off screen. I am planning on getting another webcam so you can see this. But I'm mixing a black out of half and half, raw umber and French ultramarine blue. And I've got one brush for that, and I've got another brush purely for the white. For the white. Oh, it is very hard oftentimes to keep the white completely pure, but there we are. Okay, so titanium white. This area here would be white because white. Following the pattern, it would be just white. I'm going to take that up, right up to the eyeball there. Okay, and I'm not worried about any kind of slip-ups. With the eyelid, the eyelash, because the eyelashes are going to be painted green. And with more of this paint, the brush I'm using, can you guess? That's right, it's a Rosemary & Co. Rigger. It's Series 377, Series 771. And this one is a 0 because we're working with increasingly small. Okay, that paint's not going on syrupy at all. So back into the linseed. There's water in the mix. Seed, nice and syrupy, but still to observe the fat over lean rule. Now, in reality, this part of the painting here, this part of the board, hasn't had any treatment at all. There's been no work here previously other than the staining, and the staining, as you know, is very, very lean. So, actually going in with such a rich mix is still observing the fat over lean principle. But I could have gone in, I could have still observed that principle and just gone in with neat paint. So now to my black mix. Black mix made up of ultramarine blue and in this case raw umber because that's the cooler of the umbers. And what I'm going to do, try and find that leading edge. See how the eyelash disappears. A little bit more water to the linseed oil mix. There's a lot of linseed for less water in the mix. Another plan to make sure that you observe this rule is just to get
eyedroppers and just drop a little extra mix of linseed oil every day that you go back and continue your painting process, painting practice. That's nice, but it's still for me a little bit too stiff a mix of paint. I'd like it to be a little bit more inky. Inky is an expression you've heard me say quite a lot. And when you paint, you'll realise, what is meant by inky. Get the idea? You know anyway, up front without even attempting it, what ink is like. When the mix of, when you get the water mixable oil mix right, you'll be able to feel that inkiness, that inky quality right under your brush tip. Oh, there, just there. Got the mix just right, and I can tell that it's flowing just effortlessly from the belly of the brush right out to the tip, and it's flowing just effortlessly. Really is a joy to work with. Now, I can't believe that I had such a hang up about oil paints, because I've resisted quite a lot the opportunity to use oils. So if that is white, black, white here, white, I think so. I'm now using my stand to prop up the brush and take my clean white brush back into the mix. This paint is a lot more creamy than inky. But there's a lovely thing about the paint is that even when it goes right up against another colour, it doesn't flow into it, it doesn't bleed like watercolour, it just sits up against it like a perimeter. They kind of respect each other's space. And so that's one of the things that I like about oil paint. What I don't like about oil paint is the lag time in between. So once you get to these layers here, yep, it's quite slow. You have to be patient. Now, there's some aspects of my art in which, yes, I am fairly patient. But waiting for oils to dry so you can get on with the next part of your painting plan is not a joy feeling at all. Gotta be honest. And so it might be an idea to have several works on the go at the same time. Now I'm looking at the line and the curve of the black and white there, and I can see that that doesn't read entirely well. So I am hoping that even though that white is wet and juicy, I can go over with my black. I've changed the brush from that device, picked up my brush, and as long as I don't overwork the space too much, I should be able to drop in a fairly reasonable black here. And so I have. There is the pattern continued. Now it has been tinted, the white has been tinted a little bit, but it does give the illusion of aerial perspective in the sense that it's moving off into the distance, and it may be in some kind of shaded area. There might be a little bit of shade there which is affecting it, but that's okay. I'm happy with that. What I'm not happy with is this little bit of the chessboard under the hummingbird's tail. It's always been a little bit too brown. Now's my chance to go in and correct that. Yeah, April has been fun. Now, on my Patreon account, the the April work should be coming out fairly soon. It should be coming out in May. But for everybody else, you're going to have to wait. If you want to see this without the Patreon, then you're going to have to wait till June when you get it for free. But that's okay. And there is another part of me that has kind of decided that the amount of work that's needed to time all these elements, and well, it's just more work than not fun. So it's much better just to do the artwork and to share it. This padlock needs to be a little bit darker to suggest that there is depth there, grey to the front, but darkening towards the back. Okay. Some artists forgot those tiny little bird toenails. So press and release. Press a little bit more, release. Press and release. And that was good because the black toenails have coincided with a white check board. Not so much with the bird's left foot, but that will be visible here on the branch. That's there, another little detail done. Yeah, okay. Fairly happy with that. And so, the last thing that needs to be done is the eyelashes. And now we get a chance to do it. This brush stand is already um, working really, really nicely. Working well for me. Got some cadmium yellow light. Of all the greens that I could make, I want to make a very fresh sap green. So the blue that I'm using is the cerulean blue hue. It's a hue because it's a synthetic copy of an original pigment, which is very expensive. You're going for cerulean. In the mixes that I've seen, it's fairly expensive. I have actually been contemplating some other projects involving acrylic paints rather than oil paint. But I've been learning so much with the oil that part of me wants to really persevere with it. Pressing firmly and moving my hand away, upward. Paint doesn't really want to mix for me, so a little bit more water. And I may have to drop in some linseed oil. Get the final layers of paint working for me. So that's the cap coming off the linseed oil. A dropper would be ideal in dropping down just tiny amounts of the medium so that we're not working neat medium but in a satisfying mix. I can already tell that that is coming quite nicely. Lovely. Oh, okay, that seems to be flowing quite nicely on the palette. Will it flow off the brush? Same way. So pressing firmly and moving the hand away, not the fingers. Moving the hand upward, well, forward and upward. Yep, that did it. One. This bit here was a poor calculation where we've got a lot of green against green of the hummingbird. Moving my hand gently away. As I do so, the trajectory is naturally upward, so the brush is going to come up off the surface. Yeah, the green eyelashes just evolved, and there is a fairly green message in the interpretation of this artwork. However, the idea of grasses and whatnot next to your eyes is an uncomfortable view, and I suppose the artwork is saying, you know, we love these creatures, but we have to look after them, and we have a duty of responsibility. It's true, and the world is not the way it should be. And so it's an uncomfortable message, and it's difficult to look at. So pressing quite firmly, then as the brush moves away, all I have to do is lift up it. The black that's there plus the white is acting as an underpainting, akin to a grisaille in the old master painting. So pressing quite firmly. And of course the green makes quite a nice complementary colour to the pink skin tones. So ultimately it's not a bad choice. It kind of dampens down the white, which looks a little bit ridiculous. So the green now has got so much linseed oil in it that it's thinned to a certain point. That's become translucent. Moving the hand away, not the fingers. Kind of dampens down how abrasive that white looks. So, and it didn't have the kind of stainless steel look anyway. I called it stainless steel earlier, but it doesn't really look stainless steel. It just looks awkward. Is awkward a bad thing? Not necessarily. I suppose the compositions in these artworks are kind of awkward. They don't sit very well. They're not planned out deliberately, since they're a product of the unconscious mind and doodling. So you just have to take a risk compositionally and accept what you get when you're doodling. But that has a kind of freshness and honesty about it. A bit more pigment, I think. Um, too much medium ratio to pigment, so we need to address this better. It's been a very, very enjoyable experience getting to know oil paints, especially these water mixable oil paints, which also carry the message, which is contained in the artwork itself, I suppose, that we're supposed to care about the environment. Well, these water soluble paints use less of the solvents which are bad for the environment. But are they squeaky clean? No, they're not, because they include all the usual suspects like cadmium, cobalt, titanium, these heavy metals and such like, which are, you know, have poisonous qualities, poisonous content. So, but the fact that these can be cleaned up without the use of solvents makes them a much more ecologically friendly option. This is a little bit awkward in that I'm moving my hand towards me. A little bit more pressure towards me. So gently lifting the brush up. There. Okay. That is it. I have put the chessboard in. There's a nice shadow area to the white, which was unexpected. It's a bonus that I hadn't planned for. The lashes have now a green tinge to them. Outlined in black, which makes them a little bit cartoonish, but nobody would think that this is a realistic painting by any stretch of the imagination. We have the padlock here in a sort of pseudo gold, and we need this symbolic other image to complete the composition, but that'll be added on later. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me during these projects. The projects for April. We've got one more day, and then a new project in May, which is us learning from the art of Henri Rousseau and perhaps also Frida Kahlo, and they paint in very different styles. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. Thank you for watching this, and back to the classroom. And so that brings us up to date with all the works that you can see. So part of the problem is with oils that I've discovered is the waiting for the drying time. So for instance, this mandala halo area around the totem pole Quetzal guitar eye waterfall thingy still hasn't dried yet. So one of the downsides, I suppose, to using oils is if, like me, you're more used to using acrylic, there's less waiting around, there's less lag time in between episodes of painting. And so that's something to factor in. Having said that, the magenta and the viridian are dry. We're just waiting for some parts of the diox purple, and then we should be able to give this a go. This was an extra work that I decided to try and fit in to fill out April and just to get more out of the experience of using oils and to painting from the imagination or the unconscious mind. So it has been really enjoyable. Been quite a steep learning curve. I've learned a lot about the good that is in oils. For instance, the blending and the open working time is excellent. The opacity of the paint and the ability to cover up and redraw, endlessly redraw, and
modify areas for correction, not necessarily mistakes, but areas that you want to change. For someone like me who changes their mind quite a lot, then oil is a very good paint to use. And these water mixable oils are just very versatile, very useful. And if you haven't tried them, then I hope that you've found some inspiration from these videos, um, and hopefully that will inspire your creativity wherever you happen to be. Thank you for viewing this one, and hopefully see you in the next one, which will be the last one for April, and then we'll get started on May. Thank you for viewing. Bye bye now.